plugged in. It was the best of times.
Yeah, I would question myself in the same situation and hold off a beat and consider the consequences.
People were going to die!
It was the worst of times.
The Codex!
It was the age of wisdom.
Your choices, Clark. Your actions. That's what makes you who you are.
It was the age of foolishness.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
No character has been rewritten and repurposed more than Clark Kent. Hollywood adaptations have altered in the telling largely due to the views of the creators in their eras, not necessarily with intention until his most recent interpretations, those of Zack Snyder and of James Gunn. The prior adaptations resemble the reinterpretations in the characters' comic roots, where writers occasionally reboot the continuity, and particularly of DC Comics, to better resemble modern science and circumstances and make it more believable to the audience. The Snyderverse most represents the deconstructionist takes of various DC alternate universe stories called Elseworlds, where Superman was found by Russia or by a still puritanical US, or in other eras, demonstrating how the universe of DC can only exist if Superman is found by a single unassuming Kansas farm couple whose trope is, at this point, hanging by a thread to existence and relevance. The storyline Snyder had planned resembled in particular the Superman of Injustice, who watches Lois killed by the Joker and executes him, becoming the dictator that Lex Luthor says he most fears when he's making his best arguments. His Flash was from Flashpoint, where Barry rewrites the DC history by saving his mother in the past. Affleck's Batman was from The Dark Knight Returns, a grizzled old madman and pseudo-fascist who fights Superman in a suit of armor. Aquaman was the bearded, almost Lovecraftian sea monster of a man from his later renditions. But even before Snyder, Warner had commissioned a Green Lantern that was incorporating Blackest Night, where other color spectrums were revealed and led to the Black Ring and its Legion of the Dead, without ever having established the Green Lantern in the first place, deconstructing what had yet to be constructed. Snyder may have only been trying to make WB's convoluted plans coherent by using the Flash to rewrite the universe before we even started. Gunn's is closer to the 1980s and 90s comic book Superman and Lex Luthor, a working-class boy trying his best to help the poor during a depression as a billionaire tries to take him down out of little more than envy and spite, rationalizing it with elaborate paranoid propaganda about Superman's alienness. These things matter. Superheroes, action heroes, rom-com tropes, like the heroes and gods before them, are archetypes of our collective unconscious. They are all around us. They are nowhere. They are inside us. They are us. If they do the wrong thing, then they and our direct experience of the world do not match. If we don't notice the trick, we will rationalize to make them match, adjusting our worldviews to fit a fiction and thus believe something that doesn't match the world. Confirmation bias, sunk cost, and other fallacies take care of the rest. When the personification of truth, justice, collaboration, and everything good is destructive, immature, self-centered, Christian, alien, and genetically superior, these traits we will identify as good if we cannot recognize the symbol as corrupted, perhaps because we have categorized the symbol as incorruptible in the first place. If we see these traits are bad, we may start categorizing the hero as bad, taking the rest of his representations, like truth and justice, as bad or meaningless tricks. In 2018, Zack Snyder purchased the film rights to The Fountainhead, but Netflix rejected his pitch. 1943's The Fountainhead and 1957's Atlas Shrugged were propaganda for objectivism, Ayn Rand's philosophy proposing that exceptional people be exceptions to the rules. It emerges from a great men view of history and the myth of the arrow of progress, where warfare and people who committed the largest atrocities are seen as the origins of a current great state or world, and which is asymptotically approaching utopia. The supposition of objectivism is that not only were these great men, but because of the progress they inspired, they should not be judged the same as normal men. The whole world, to Ayn Rand, was an omelet, and the average human an egg waiting to be shaped by the striking hand of the Superman or Ubermensch, though she was wise enough to not reiterate the Nietzscheism. This worldview, the closest a philosophy could possibly get to that of Lex Luthor, is why Zack Snyder's superheroes are allowed to do what they do, and the films do not judge them. In Snyder's mind, the Justice League are exempt from the very rules they are meant to uphold. Rand's sycophantic capitalist propaganda may as well have been the charter of the John Birch Society, an organization that began in 1958, the year after Atlas Shrugged was published, organized around the para-religious belief that the rich are the chosen of God and the poor are serving penance or were made for servitude. Rules don't apply to the rich because wealth is destiny manifest. Taken with certain Protestant sects' ideas that dark skin is the mark of Cain, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant rich people are the chosen of God, meant to be rich and rule over the less fortunate and darker-skinned. But even before Rand, there was Carl Schmitt. Carl Schmitt, a critic of democracy and parliamentarism and a proponent of dictatorship, claimed every government should have a dictatorial element in their constitution, and particularly liked the presidential powers for their ability to declare a state of emergency or exception, allowing the position to seize power. Schmitt feared more than anything the satanic unification of the world in a global state. Know how it was Schmitt's Christianity that informed his views of the Antichrist through its misinterpretation of Revelations, but a proponent of dictatorial power, a strange contradiction since dictatorships tend to be oppressive unifications. Schmitt ultimately was a Nazi propagandist. Literally, he joined the Nazi Party. Positive Christianity was a form of Christianity neither positive nor Christian, begun by the Nazi Party to take advantage of the brainwashing the church had already performed on the German people, and manipulate it into accepting the Führer as a sort of pharaoh, and the Nazis as his holy army.
He chose poorly.
René Girard believed that people mimic the ambitions of their most successful peers, causing a perpetual strife as they are locked into endless rivalry with those they envy and hate, called a mimetic rivalry. Eventually, this rivalry becomes a war of everyone against a singular enemy, an idea he called the scapegoat mechanism, as a target is held responsible for all the ills of a community. This fits with Schmitt's idea that the high point of political rhetoric is when the enemy is concrete and clear in people's minds. All of these ideas come together in the modern movement that I'm going to call the Dork Illuminati, a cult of wealthy Protestant men that believe in creating a tech dictator that rules the world through a surveillance state, supposedly to save us from the Antichrist, most often personified in their minds by Greta Thunberg, a little girl who is trying to get us to save the world. I cannot think of a more Injustice League sounding alliance name or belief set than the Dork Illuminati's real name, or a more tropey fear for villains to have than a little girl trying to save the world from annihilation. The group is full of what are called thought-terminating cliches, phrases and inversion tropes meant to halt conversation. There's a name for their shadowy enemy and outgroup, the Cathedral, and its democratic goals, the Synopsis. If someone presents countering information, they're quoting the Synopsis on behalf of the Cathedral. When I hear the Dork Illuminati's real name, which is tantamount to Dark Light, I cannot help but think of the Dark Elves, but also the Black Sun, Himmler's sun wheel consisting of its 12 radial Sig runes, the lightning bolt S runes from the Nazi SS, that he commissioned for a floor in the Castle Weffelsberg, the intended SS headquarters. Himmler was the more occult-obsessed member of the party's inner circle, and it reeks of a sort of evil round table. Later neo-Nazi and far-right groups that shared an obsession with esoterica, Ultima Thule, and other fictional pasts for the Aryan race took it up as an alternative to the swastika, though I suspect it was already a Himmler-run secret society within the Nazi Party, akin to the Red Skull's Hydra, seeing the Führer as a useful idiot or means to an end. The Dork Illuminati has another name, what I'll call the New Prescription. I must point out here the proliferation of X's in the companies owned by one of its members, Elon Musk, and that not only is an X a swastika with the arms cut off, but RX, the prescription symbol that originated as the Eye of Ra. I'll call the other partner in this Stone Thule. Thule's mass surveillance company is named after the scrying orb Saruman used to surveil Middle-earth. This is a cult of men dedicated to being the bad guys. Do they know that and think they're being ironic? Have the bad guys been invented to them as the true heroes? Or are they sleepwalking, guided by a sociopathic cult leader who has made the irony of the previous stage literal? Stone Thule has name-dropped Schmitt as well as Girard's scapegoat mechanism and what it revealed about Christianity as making him reconsider his own faith. In other words, his Christian indoctrination triggered a specific interpretation of fascism as the good guy. The intriguing thing about scapegoat mechanics, combined with Schmitt's fascistic politics, is that consciously they seem to see themselves as the scapegoats, as Germans did in the wake of World War I austerity, that the wealthy as the most successful have been blamed for all ills. But then they manufacture an actual scapegoat to fuel their victimhood narrative. And those groups are successful at exactly the things a wealthy white Protestant man isn't. See, a wealthy white Protestant man has made his entire life about profit and power, but the actual power was cultural and sexual all along. Power and money were only a means to sex for men too inbred and charmless to acquire it under their own power. So their scapegoats become women, Romani, Jews, Africans, alternative sexualities and genders, people with actual ties to the origins of humanity, perceived sexual superiority, and with fluidity of identity and sexuality, genitalia they cannot face. This is the Jungian shadow of fascist culture. All their power is simulated and only exists in a simulation they must enforce through violence and the threats of it. Their victims always demonstrate power in the real world, and so must be eradicated because they threaten the simulation. In Dawn of Everything, David Graeber mentions that in several Mesoamerican cultures, the king was not just allowed, but expected to break every rule he enforced, be they legal, social, moral, or ethical, to demonstrate he was above those rules, and thus powerful enough to enforce them. This logic flows from when leaders and kings were deities. A god does not follow the laws they create, or else the law is more powerful than they are. If Jesus is God, he must prove it by breaking the laws of physics that hold humanity in check. Thus, a king cannot be bound by the laws of the land he manifests with his very existence. To anyone living in this perspective, when a political autocrat breaks the social mores of his office and the rules of decorum, yet is not punished or removed, he demonstrates he is more than a politician. When he breaks the rules of nation itself without repercussion, he proves himself the king. Every time he is not struck down after breaking a social more, we promote him. If we allow him to rewrite truth and break the laws of physics, if only in the minds of his followers, he will cease to be considered human at all. This might seem primitive, but our conditioning is 6,000 years old and ubiquitous, only altered by layers of prosaic misinterpretation. Every stage of our development remains within us. Some vestigial remnants of our metaphorical embryonic stages have been like tales discarded, but most linger just beneath our fragile modernity, never far from the surface.
Okay, fine. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
The only error is you will not see yourself at all. The shadow, both personal and cultural, is precisely the mechanism by which we become villains. Somehow, someone will take all the little symbols you use, like signposts, to tell you which way is right and which way is wrong, and slowly redefine and redefine and redefine, until you don't notice that they've been completely inverted, and you along with them. You will have become the opposite of everything you stood for, while believing you haven't changed at all.